Unit 3, Lesson 8, Solving Square Root Equations. The only way to get rid of a square root in an equation is to square both sides of the equation. But before you do that, make sure the square root is isolated. Also make sure you square sides, not terms. Explain why that is so. So let's take a look at this example. So we must square whole side, not term by term, since terms are separated by plus and minus, and you cannot distribute the square over addition slash subtraction. So to show you an example, let's say you had bracket 9 plus 1 bracket squared. So are we able to distribute that 2 into the exponent when there's an addition sign in between? So if I work it out that way, I'll get 9 squared plus 1 squared, which simplifies to 81 plus 1, which is 82. But that is not the proper way, but you should actually be using FOIL as one way. So you're foiling it out so that I'm using my binomial expansion method, and I'm getting 100 at the end. So I'm getting a squared, which is 9 squared, and then 2 times AB, which is 2 times 9 times 1, plus 1 squared, which is 1 squared. And so you have 81 plus 18 plus 1, which equals 100. In this case, because within the brackets you have like terms, you can also add those numbers right away and then square it, and you get 100. So one more example to expand on that is if I have bracket a plus b bracket squared, to re-emphasize what I'm saying is you cannot put the square on the a on the b as if you are distributing that exponent because there's an addition in the way because it's a binomial. So if there's a addition or subtraction in between, I need to really FOIL it out. And so I don't have a squared plus b squared. We need to actually FOIL, and when we do that, it should look like a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So on to number 2. So what I'm going to do is thoroughly go over 2a, and then b, c, d, I'll do it quicker. So 2a, let's do this together. So first thing I notice square root of x minus 1 plus 7 equals x. So if I have a binomial here on the left side, I can't do much with it. And so I'm going to get rid of that 7 by subtracting 7 to both sides. That way I get x minus 1, square root all of that, equals x minus 7. Notice that if I put brackets on this x minus 7, it's kind of like I have this big one monomial and this big monomial. Like I'm treating it by putting those brackets as like one term. So that's why these brackets are so important, especially when I have these binomials. So because I have something equals something, I can now square both sides, square the whole side, and I'm not doing it by term. And so I'm going to put brackets here and square both sides. When I do that, I get, well, the left side, my square root and my square is going to be gone. I have x minus 1 equals bracket x minus 7 bracket squared. So focusing on my right side, remember I can't put the 2 onto the x to the 7 like that. I need to do FOIL. And so I get x minus 1 equals x squared, and then I'm going to do plus 2 bracket x bracket negative 7 from my understanding of binomial expression, which means this on the side. And so I get plus negative 7, negative 7. So I'm treating like the negative 7 as part of my complete b. All right, so that's that, and I'm going to now collect and simplify. So let's simplify. Let me zoom out. So I have x minus 1 equals x squared minus 14x plus 49. So I want to get all my x's to one side so I could start solving. So I'm going to subtract x and add 1, so I get rid of those. And in order to do that, I need to do the same on the right. So subtract x and add 1. So the next line, I get 0 equals x squared minus 15x plus 50. And think of what are the factors of 50 that will work. And so you're thinking 1 and 50, 2 and 25, 5 and 10, and 50 and 1. And so you might start writing these numbers down. And I'm noticing that two numbers will multiply to 50 and add to negative 15. And in order to multiply to a positive and add to a negative, I need to have these ones. Because negative 5 times negative 10 equals positive 50 and adds to negative 15. So I'm going to write that down. So I get 0 equals x minus 5 bracket, x minus 10 bracket. And so I get x is equal to 5 or x is equal to 10. So when we go back to the question, it says, solve the following, check your answers if all of them are correct, if all of them actually make sense. So what I need to do is do the left side, right side check for all these questions. So we're going to do the left side, right side check. And the way we do that is we sub in the x values that we got, and we sub it into the left side, right side check. And by verifying the left side is equal to the right side, that verifies that our solution is actually correct. So I'm going to sub in x equals 10 as the first part. This is how I'm going to format it. I'm going to plug in the 10 for x this time, and I get square root of 10 minus 1 plus 7 equals 10. Simplify what's under the square root. That part is equal to square root 9, and so plus 7. Square root 9 simplifies to a 3. So 3 plus 7 equals 10. So 10 is equal to 10. And so that means x equals 10 is one of the solutions. I'm going to do the same kind of check for x equals 5. So same process, sub x equals 5, and the left side, right side check. I'm going to write down the equation once, sub it in, and I get, well, square root of 5 minus 1. That part should simplify to a square root of 4. So square root of 4 plus 7 equals 5, which is 2 plus 7 equals 5, and 9 is never going to equal 5. And therefore, I would conclude left side doesn't equal right side, and so I'm going to write since with the backwards therefore, since left side doesn't equal right side, therefore x equals 5 is not a solution. So based on the left side, right side check, I do need to write a conclusion. So do left side, right side check to conclude, because I can't just leave it at x equals 5 or 10 and leave it hanging. I need to conclude. So because we had x equals 10 being an okay one and x equals 5, I need to cross that 5 out. And I'm going to say, therefore, x equals 10 is the solution. So I need to cross that x equals 5 because according to my left side, right side check, it was not true. And so therefore, x equals 10 is the only solution for question A. So we have this equation, and anytime I see a binomial, I will get in the habit of putting brackets there because that's where most people make the mistakes. So as a first step, I am going to want to square both sides. Why is that? It's so that I get rid of that square root on the left side. So I'm going to square both sides, and I get this. So when I square both sides, on the left side, that is going to get rid of the square root sign and the squared sign. Okay. Meanwhile, I will need to FOIL the right side because as you notice, it's a binomial and there's brackets and there's a squared on it. So see how I would have made a critical mistake if I did not provide the brackets there, because then you would have probably just done 2 squared, which is wrong. So I'm going to FOIL. So I'm going to do 3x bracket squared, which should equal 9x squared. I'm going to do 2 times 3x, which is 12x, and then 2 squared, which is 4. And as you can guess, as a next step, I'm going to move everything to one side. Okay. All right. And so that gets rid of those. And actually, it also gets rid of those. And you might get stumped because if you're surprised to see this, but don't be scared. You get 0 equals 12x. And if you think of how do I get the x by itself in this case, I am going to want to divide both sides by 12 because you're just going to think algebraically, how do I get rid of that x? And when I do that, x is going to equal to 0. Okay. So x is equal to 0. That seems simple enough. We're going to do a check because we sometimes don't anticipate that to happen, right? And so we're going to do the check to verify our answer. So I'm writing a lot of writing in green just because we're doing everything virtually. So the check. So I'm going to write my left side, right side. Well, I'm going to do sub x equals 0. I'm going to do my left side, right side. I'm going to write down the equation once. I'm going to sub the 0 in anytime I see the x. And then I'm going to simplify. So on the left side, I should get square root 4. And on the right side, I should get a 2. And 2 does equal 2. And so then we can conclude that x is in fact equal to 0. All right, part C. So for this question, anytime I see the exponent as a half, note that's the same thing as writing square root. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, along with I'm going to move that x over to the right side. Reason being, I want some kind of like monomial equals a monomial. What I mean is, if I put brackets here, that now looks like a monomial because I'm treating that binomial as like one thing. So similar to how I did the question above. See how I put brackets as the very first step and for the second, for question B as well. All right, next part. So what do you think is the next part? Well, I need to square both sides so I can get rid of that square root sign. What is that going to do? Well, on the left side, the square root sign and the exponent 2 is going to be gone. But as you can anticipate, I need to FOIL the right side. Again, the importance of the brackets. And when I do that, I get the following. And if you're not yet ready to do it this way, just make sure you FOIL it out and you're getting the same answer as me. You don't have to do it the exact same way as me, as long as you're getting it correctly towards the end and you're showing enough steps. And so next, I'm going to simplify. It looks much nicer. I'm going to start moving things around to one side, like so. And when I do that, I will get rid of those. Next, I will get this. And I remember, this is called the related equation, okay? So I have some kind of simplified equation. In order to solve for this, I need to find the x-intercepts, or the solutions. So solution, root, and x-intercepts are really all kind of the same. And then I'm going to take the negative out because there's a greatest common factor there. So how do I get the x-intercepts or the solutions for this? So I'm going to try to factor because the numbers look nice enough. So what are the listed factors of -16 that add to 6? Well, I'm going to start by writing down the factors of 16. So 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. But as soon as I say the digits 2 and 8, it's screaming at me because if I put a negative on one of those numbers, I will be able to add to get to a 6, a positive 6. So what did I end up doing is that, yeah, I had the 8 and 2. If I put the negative in front of the 2, that will add to a 6. Next, I'm going to write down my factors in an organized way. And at this point, I can tell you what the x-intercepts are or what my solutions are. And so the values where y is going to equal to 0, or the other side is going to equal to 0, is when x is equal to -8 or x equals 2. Because if I plug negative 8 into that expression, that whole thing is going to equal to 0. When x is equal to 2 and I plug it into that bracket, the whole thing equals 0. So those are my possible solutions. But the question said, make sure you do a check. So I'm going to do that. So same idea. I'm going to plug x equals negative 8 into my original equation. I'm going to see if the left side equals right side. So in this case, I'll do sub x equals 2, left side, right side, write down your equation, plug in your 2, and that side is going to equal to, well, 2 squared is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 minus 7 is 1, square root of 1 is 1, and then 1 plus 2 should equal 3. So that means, since left side equals right side, x equals 2 is a solution. So we know x equals 2 is a solution so far. Still going to do the check for x equals negative 8 as well. So sub x equals negative 8, left side, right side, write down my equation, sub x equals negative 8. So far, negative 8 squared by bed net mass is 64. 64 times 2, and then minus 7. All right. And I have 121 under the square root. Square root of 121 is 11. 11 minus 8 is equal to 3 as well. So same conclusion. Since left side equals right side, therefore x equals negative 8 is a solution. And so I'm going to write, well, I did the left side, right side to conclude, and I got x equals negative 8 or x equals 2 are both solutions. Finally, question D. So what do you think is the next step? Well, I want to get rid of that square root x, and I want to put it on the right side because I don't like how on the left side I have a huge binomial and it looks messy otherwise. So my first step is going to be that I'm going to add square root x to both sides. When I do that, I'll get rid of those. When I do that, I'll get this. Square root of x minus 3 equals square root x plus 3. At this point, I am going to put brackets on both sides so that it looks like a monomial equals a monomial. So I'm going to square both sides. See how I wrote brackets on that? And then I square both sides. On the left side, the square root and square is going to be gone. And so I have, I have x minus 3. And then on the right side, I have to FOIL it because I have a binomial squared. So I have to FOIL it. So there's a lot of very consistent steps throughout. So I'm going to simplify, and that's going to simplify to this, x minus 3 equals, so square root of x squared is equal to x. 2 times 3 is 6, so I'm going to put that in front of the radical, so square root x. 3 squared is equal to 9. So I'm going to, again, move everything to the right side, and so I'm going to add 3 to both sides of the equation, and I get this. I'm going to cross off the parts that cross off, so the x is on the left side, the 3 is on the left side, and the x is also on the right side. Furthermore, I get 0 equals 6 square root x plus 12, and I'm going to subtract 12 so that I can do that. So when I do that, I will get negative 12 equals 6 square root x. I'm going to divide both sides by 6. I'll get negative 2 equals square root x. I'm not done yet. I need to get x by itself. I'm going to do that by squaring both sides. And therefore, I will get x equals 4. So I'm not done yet. I need to check by doing the left side, right side check to conclude. So on this side, I have sub in x equals 4. I'm going to do that. I'm going to write down the equation once. I'm going to plug in 4 every time I see the x. And I get square root 1 minus 2, which is equal to 1 minus 2, which is equal to negative 1. Notice that the two sides do not equal. Therefore, I'm going to conclude that x equals 4 is not the solution. I need to do a final conclusion. So I'm going to say there's no solution for this question because the x equals 4 that we checked for is not a solution.